Hello and welcome to the Nialler and podcast. You're listening to myself, Niall, and Andrea Cleary on episode 278, I want to say. Andrea, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Niall. How are you?
Good. We are doing well today. The change of weather has a big effect on our mood. You know, we went 9 days without sunshine there in Ireland recently, so it was
10. It was 10 days.
10.
Yeah.
I can only count to 9, you know that.
That's true.
But it's really feeling normal again. It's feeling nice.
It is.
There's a brightness in the morning when I'm waking up, which is lovely. I'm still getting used to waking up at 6 a.m. with the child. And this morning we opened the blinds and it was lovely and bright.
And the sun was there.
For once. Yeah, so it was lovely. So this episode is all about our February's best music, essentially. I'm going to talk about albums specifically with a few songs afterwards. I think it's been a very strong year for albums so far, which is great. There's lots to delve into. First of all, let's talk briefly about our own issue. It was taking up a lot of my headspace last week, and you were very angry about it as well.
Yeah.
So
I have, frustrations, I suppose.
Yeah, we have feelings. So last week I got a message from Michael, who does a lot of advertising and sponsorship stuff on 909 with me. And he was like, I can't load the podcast. This was the new season of Music is Very Good in 2025 so far, isn't it? So I was like, okay, that's weird. And I was like, oh, looks like Acast is down, because I went and looked at all the episodes were just gone. So logged into Acast, and then all of a sudden, every podcast, the podcast feed was not there. It wasn't present. Now, I was looking at it going, every now and again we get an email. We play snippets of songs as part of the 909 music podcast. It is for purposes of criticism and review, and because we talk about it.
And I would argue promotion.
You could argue that as well, absolutely. So essentially there's a thing called fair dealing, which is a copyright exception that allows anyone to use limited extracts of a work for purpose of research or private study without permission of the author. The work may also be used for criticism, parody, review, and for reporting current events. So that's kind of what we do a lot of the time. We talk about music. We sometimes we play a clip of the song in question. That is something that a lot of people accept. And generally speaking, we've been doing this podcast for 8 years. And what that means is we haven't had many episodes which were, result of takedown notices or copyright. Occasionally you do, and it's usually on Spotify if we play something like from a big major label, and it's usually an older episode from a couple of years ago. Whatever. Every label is different. Hopefully, it's a case where, okay, we're obviously not playing the full song of the act. So, it's definitely for a reference and for context. So essentially last week what happened was I logged in, Acast had deleted everything. I got an email from them the previous week saying that they had an issue with something to do with the AI episode we did in 2023. Now, funny, I thought that was like, oh, maybe it's the Paul McCartney that episode we had, as an example, we had Drake and Paul McCartney as in using their voice, essentially giving them words to say. Yeah. So we had Paul McCartney saying, join the 909 Patreon, for example. And also we played a clip of an AI song that had taken off and blown up at the time, because that was the first time that it happened, which was Drake and The Weeknd, the voices of them. So I think that's actually what the song was. Acast sent me an email on, I think, Thursday or Friday, and by the time I looked at it, it was a Tuesday, and saw, okay, grand. And then I was like, well, this must be why the podcast is down. So got in touch with support, and they were like, you're playing music on the podcast. We don't allow podcasts with full music episodes. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, it's for a review. And anyway, essentially they don't take the idea of fair dealing as a valid reason. So they unceremoniously deleted the podcast.
And so just so that listeners are clear, because we have a few different players in this, right? We have ourselves, the Nialler and podcast, we have Acast, and we have Spotify, who we're kind of talking about here. And there are other podcast apps as well. Acast, when we're talking about Acast in this instance, we're not talking about people using like the Acast podcast app on their phone as their podcast app. Acast are actually like
they host hosted the
host
podcast
and like distribute the podcast onto other platforms as well.
Yeah.
So our podcast lives on Acast, and then Acast then puts that podcast on Spotify or whatever, you know, used to be like Google Podcast or whatever other podcast app. So just to kind of
exactly, yeah.
so
I don't
that's
even.
clear.
I think the Acast podcast player app might be gone now, but
I think it might be, yeah.
But you know, so essentially, the podcast was gone, and I didn't know why, and I didn't get an email or anything about it. When I got onto support, in fairness, they were very quick, and they got back to me within an hour, and were like, "Yeah, we deleted the podcast." I was like, "Why?" Well, because you're playing music on, we don't allow that. And I was like, "Well, it's not the same as it's not a black and white issue." And anyway, there was no talking to them, and they were like, "Well," I was like, "Look, I'm after like we have 8 years of a podcast, 267, 6 episodes by that point. Can you give me time to take it away? Like, I mean, that's a lot of work you're deleting without telling me. It's like my." You know, like a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of words, a lot of
podcasts
audio.
that didn't have music in them as well.
Yeah, and you're like, so they did. They actually did. They gave me 48 hours. In fairness to them, I mean, it was very stressful, but they did give me 48 hours to redirect the feed, essentially. So
yeah.
That's what happened in the end. And so I was able to move it to Podbean. So now, you know, nialler9.podbean.com is where currently where the podcast resides. And that means your feed shouldn't be affected. So if you hear this and you have an issue or anything with how you normally subscribe to the podcast, nialler9.podbean.com is where you'll find the links and stuff. So I did some digging into this, and this was a response to. This all happened because the National Music Publishers Association of America launched a takedown initiative against Spotify for unlicensed use of music and podcasts on its platform. There was thousands of podcasts that were notified, or Spotify was notified about. And as part of this, it seems like Acast and certainly Acast is the only one I'm aware of, got spooked by these requests, and rather than allow, usually what happens with these kind of things is actually when Spotify sends you an email about copyright takedown stuff, they will give you a chance to respond. And the response,
it's called a DMCA notice.
Yeah. So the response says, one of the valid responses is, I can use this music, or I can use this piece of copyright material because it's for review or criticism. And so you usually fill it in. And then so far, I don't think much has ever happened. I actually couldn't tell you how many podcast episodes have been removed. I think they usually accept that as a fair reason, but it seems like this whole thing is because, in fairness, you know, we're going to be talking a lot next week about Spotify and its outsized influence on the streaming monoculture. But this is all because the podcasters like ourselves are caught in the crossfire of the National Music Publishers Association and Spotify, who have, you know, they have valid reasons for criticizing Spotify. They are telling them they asked them to remove 2,500 podcasts that are using or playing some music, and this is a result of the National Music Publishers Association have an issue with bundling, which is how Spotify get by. With royalty rates, Spotify allow audiobooks now. Obviously, they're trying to be the home of every audio, and now, so they've had podcasts and audiobooks for a long, long time. So, in order to reduce their royalty rates, which they're trying to pay, more on that next week when we talk to Liz Pelly, they refuse to engage with the publishers associations who are saying you're reducing the royalty rates of the artists that they represent, the songwriters they represent. So this was kind of a tit for tat thing that they did as part of this. So long story short, sorry now, I know we're starting the podcast in a very different vein than we usually do. Long story short, we don't really know what's going to happen in the future. In the grand scheme of things, we may have to consider options if this continues. This is like almost like a throwback to when music bloggers posted MP3s on servers and stuff, and then you start getting DMCA notices about hosting music. And then I had a big, people may remember 2008, 2009, I think it was, before YouTube really took off. There was a big chat with Imro about music blog and licensing. And again, you know, I mean, you're kind of, usually what happens is with this copyright stuff, you know, people, we cover a lot of independent music, and therefore people are usually happy enough, and they don't want to, like, they usually don't have a sledgehammer approach. What happened here is the first time I can remember a sledgehammer has been applied to the music podcast industry, or
And I think
the
that's
podcast
something
industry in general.
Important to kind of emphasize that, like, this isn't just with us. This is with some of the biggest music podcasts in the world have also received these notices or had their feeds removed. So I think from our perspective, it's very difficult to know where to go. I mean, for a long time, I've had my own podcast as well in the past. My favorite album, which was with Tall Tales, and I remember. And that's a music podcast about albums. And I really wanted to play the songs on the podcast, but it was too much of a risk for Tall Tales as a small independent podcast studio and publisher, you know, to take on any kind of like rights arguments in terms of like time, and also like any potential like litigation or notices in the future. So we agreed, and I was happy to agree to not play that music. But what's so frustrating, even in those conversations that we were all having, and we were all finding it so frustrating, that there are these sort of like accepted rules, right? If you play less than 30 seconds, it's not a copyright violation, is kind of the biggest one. That 30 seconds thing comes from nowhere. It's not written down anywhere. And so for music podcasters who want to play music for criticism, review, or promotion, it is really important for us to have it written down legally what we are and are not allowed to do. And if we are not allowed to play music on our podcasts, then you need to tell us that. Like you need to be emphatic and tell us that, and then we can go from there. But right now there is way too much wishy-washy language around whether something counts as fair use because it's criticism or because it's review. It is undeniable that what we are doing is review and criticism, and yet the industry and Spotify and the publishers can all turn around and say, no, music podcasts don't count as criticism. And I want to understand why music podcasts don't count as criticism, whereas YouTube videos can count as criticism, or any other, or when I'm teaching my popular music class, I show clips, I play music, and that is absolutely all under fair use because it's education. So what is it exactly about podcasts that makes us different? And nobody has an answer to that. Absolutely nobody. So somebody somewhere needs to sit down and write down these rules for us, because otherwise we're all just going to be living in anxiety. And if you're the New York Times podcast, if you are a major you know, you're pulling in like hundreds of thousands a year in terms of like streaming, or, you know, your job is these podcasts, then great. Like, you know, you have a bit of a sway, you can move yourselves behind a paywall, you know, you'll be able to survive. But for people like ourselves, and for people with, you know, even smaller podcasts than ourselves, who are doing this as like a hobby and a passion project, it's just going to push us entirely out of the industry. So we need to figure it out. We have to figure this out. And I think, unfortunately, what you and I are going to have to do with this podcast is just wait and see what the industry does, because we are small fries.
And that into the complexity of all that, obviously, is podcasts are disseminated worldwide now, obviously, like the music and the MP3s before, which I mentioned. And the complexities in copyright law usually apply to territories or individual countries. Therefore, everywhere is different. I found references to fair dealing in an Irish context, so I was happy to use that. But obviously, anyone can listen to a podcast worldwide unless you restrict it, and that's sometimes what happens. So it's a difficult thing to navigate, and it's very hard to find a definitive answer, and that's why there is no definitive answer. And if you look at the likes of YouTube, you know, they have a content ID system which matches any music you would put up, and I've started putting up the old episodes and the episodes in the last year and a half on our YouTube channel just to see what would happen. And obviously they all get flagged with the music that is there, but you're just not allowed to monetize them, and that's fine. And I'm okay with that, and that's fine. We don't currently monetize, and actually that's we don't monetize YouTube, but that's one of the issues that we have with this, is because we're not allowed to monetize things. Then how do you make money from podcasts, or at least cover your costs, because podcasting costs money, and that's where we come back to using the Patreon, because that's your direct support for us. That's a separate feed. Currently is pretty safe in terms of how it works for playing music behind essentially a paywall.
But we have no idea what that's going to be like in the future.
We don't. So it's all this, like, we'll do what we do until we're told, we really are told we can't do it anymore.
And if it comes to it, look, when we are recommending music, I'm happy to sing the songs myself.
Yeah.
And I'll sing them so off key that it would be impossible that they would ever be flagged by any kind of AI that is no doubt scraping through all of these podcasts and flagging things. So
yeah, it's only going to get worse, probably.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. Yeah, essentially the best thing you can do now, you will notice there's currently no ads on the podcast because that was previously through the Acast network. There is ads on Podbean, but I haven't put them in yet. I'm also not sure if there's any, local Irish ones as well, or local ones for the audience, which would make a big difference. I don't want to be putting ads for American things on it that don't make any sense either. But anyway, that's one thing. So patreon.com/909. If you haven't supported us before and you are thinking about that, you like this podcast and you like what we do, it's really very, very simple. $5 a month. We always do extra bonus things, and you're supporting 909 as a whole as well. So it's not just the podcast. So yeah.
And
anyway.
Just one last thing that I wanted to say on this is that, just in case it isn't very obvious or it's misunderstood, we absolutely support artists being paid when their music is being streamed, when their music is being used. We support the rights of artists, but this is just frustrating to be caught in the crossfire. So this isn't us being like, these artists, or it's nothing to do with the artists, it's nothing to do with anything like that. It is just industry.
Yeah, it's the industry
nonsense
bullshit that happens all the time.
Yeah. So buy physical music and support artists.
Yeah. And hold that thought, because we'll be talking to Liz Pelly about Spotify next week.
Yeah.
And we have conversations coming up about AI soon as well, in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, lots happening. Thursday, 6th of March as we speak. And tonight the Choice Music Prize is going to happen.
Oh my God, is it?
Yeah. I'm one of the judges. So this evening I will be going and deciding on which of the 10 albums from A Lazarus Soul, New Dad, Niamh Regan, Courtesy, Fontaines, Orla Gartland, Kneecap, Sprints, Silverbacks, and Roche. Did I say Niamh Regan? I think I did. Will win. So you'll find out, you'll know by the time you hear this which one. I wonder if it'll be a surprise. I wonder, will it be obvious to people? Hard to know. Always interesting. I couldn't tell you from the list what's going to happen, and because it hasn't happened yet, we have to go in a room and talk about music. And I think I'm really looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Well, best of luck.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Did you see who won the classic Irish album at this year's Choice Music Prize?
Was
Andrea?
it Enya?
It was Enya, yeah. Her second album, Watermark. That was one of the albums that we talked about maybe doing for the Listen Closely. I chickened out, I think. I chickened out. It just didn't feel right at the time.
It feels like as good as an excuse as any.
So I'm wondering, is Enya going to be at the Choice Prize tonight? That'd be amazing.
Not.
I know, probably
absolutely not.
She definitely
I'd be shocked if she calls in.
Even shows her face in any way.
No. Nor should she have to.
She did respond to the award, so that's nice. I'm delighted to win the RTE Choice Music Classic Album Prize. Watermark has a special place in my heart. It was the second album and really launched my career internationally. It's wonderful that people are still discovering it today, and it's an honour to be chosen for this prize to recognise Irish music. I've never heard Enya talk about Irish music before, or in recent times, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Just I wonder what Enya thinks of the new Murder Capital record. I wonder if she listened to the new album from The Script, or I wonder if she liked Dermot Kennedy. What? I would love to know what Enya's experience or knowledge of
I bet
Irish
she
music
likes
is.
CMAP.
I bet
and
she
Niamh
likes
Regan.
Well, maybe we'll find out tonight. But yeah.
Okay, let's talk about our favorite music of February. And there is some Irish music in here. Speaking of Irish music,
yes, Absolutely. First one is a joint pick from myself and yourself because this happens occasionally and happens often. And so I have a lot of albums to discuss. And the first one you've picked and I have picked is from a band called Horsegirl. And the album is called Phonetics On and On. Let me play a bit of a song called Rock City. So as Rock City from a band called Horsegirl, what do we know about this album? I've been playing this a lot. It's called Phonetics On and On. They are a New York-based college-going trio from Chicago originally, and I think it was released on Matador Records, produced by Kate LeBon, and it's a really nice collection of janky indie pop music.
Yeah,
it's like really nice. It's quite low key. I think I did describe it as my favorite indie rock albums I've heard since Manning Fireworks. I don't know if it doesn't lyrically stand up to Manning Fireworks, but that's okay. It's an album that's drawn comparisons to the Velvet Underground in terms of how the vocals sometimes play out. The Strokes, the Feelies, Pavement, and The Guardian called this a minimalist indie pop masterpiece. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I think minimalist feels right. You've said the word janky now and I can't get that word out of my head. So I won't reach for another one. I like the janky sound of the guitar. I like that it sounds a bit raw. Was it them talking about it or was it in the review, the Pitchfork review? Anyway, talking about how they are interested, obviously the album is called Phonetics On and On, and they're interested in kind of playing around lyrically. There's a lot of like la-di-das, oo-doo-oos, and a lot of just like phonetic sounds in place of words, which I think adds a nice little kind of sing-songness to it. I think two of them are studying either literature or language or something like that. So there's a little bit of like experimentation and play around that as well. I just think they're really nice songs. I'm very, very much enjoying it. The 2468 I think is a really cracking song. I think that's the first one that I heard. Yeah, I like this band a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of very elemental. It's got that simple, clean, bright sound to it. Yeah, let's play a bit of 2468 and have a bit of more context for the record.
I enjoyed the first time that I heard this song. I was on a bus coming home from work a little bit early, and sunny day. Bus was what was formerly the 46A, is now either the E1 or the E2, I don't know. But swinging around Trinity College and walking out and in from Trinity College were kind of young students walking along in twos and just in this sunshine. And it was just a lovely song to kind of soundtrack looking at that, like 2468, they walk in twos, da 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 da, in the sunshine. I was like, oh, how lovely. What a lovely sight to kind of, you
made a music video in your head.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was really, really nice. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. So I will always associate this with a sunny day in Dublin now. I hear a little bit of maybe like Belle and Sebastian at other points in this record as well. There's a kind of a playful storytellingness. Maybe it's on Switchover or maybe it's not. I can't remember. I haven't got the songs differentiated in my own head just yet.
Yeah, well, I added one in, so let's play Well I Know You're Shy.
Yeah, it's actually that song that reminded me a little bit of
Yeah.
Belle and Sebastian. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice, very simple. Yeah, really, really lovely album. And I hadn't heard I'd heard the name before, the band, but I hadn't realized. I really got around to listen to them, and then yeah, so they were announced for a gig in Dublin on June 24th in the Workman's Club at Foggy Notions. So that's currently on sale. I'd say that's going to sell out. And yeah, there's also there's like this electronic producer called Horsegirl with two eyes, and they wear a horse on their horse head. It's very
Yes.
confusing.
I
So
saw them at the
they were on
Brits,
the
I think,
Brits, yeah.
in a photo with CMAT.
Yeah, so I at least they've changed their name, Horsegirl. So that's something else, completely different band, different thing, but Horsegirl with only one eye is what we're talking about. So yeah, album is called Phonetics, On and On. Give it a listen; it's great.
Yep.
Can we talk about or will I pick one, or would you want to pick one?
It's up to you. We could go either way from here, since that was both of our picks.
You have been listening to a preview of the Nialler 9 podcast. To hear this episode in full, sign up to patreon.com/Nialler9.